I won't go anywhere then. I'll just stay. Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so here is the question that I want you to answer on your paper. So think for yourself and answer for yourself in writing, because you got to get it out of your head onto paper. And when you're thinking about getting organized, like we all do, because otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? Those of us who are here are thinking about getting organized and trying to figure out how to do that. And who knows how many times we've even tried to do that, right? So can you even think, like, how many times have you gotten on an organizing kick? Like, it's really time to get my act together, kind of. Let's do this. Any guesses? I'm like, well, I've been married for 17 years. So at least 17 years, right? That I've had a home. And I've always had this, like, if I just did this one next thing, it's this thing that's going to make a difference. It's this next thing. I've got to find the piece that I'm missing, and then it'll all be figured out. And so we're always looking for that next thing, the thing that we need, because once we have that, then everything will suddenly fall into place, right? So we're kind of in that mode. And so maybe you're in that mode right now, or maybe you can remember a time of being in that mode. And yes, daily. It started as a child. Yes. I created paperwork for myself. I was a homeschooled child. I created paperwork for myself that I didn't need, because that was like having things together. You just make up these definitions or have this picture in your mind of what it means, and then you're looking for what you need to get there, right? So when you're in that mode of looking for that magic piece, looking for figuring it all out, pulling it all together, what is it that you're looking for? Describe. So this is brain dumping. This is getting out onto paper all the things that are popping up in your mind right now. What feeling or end result would you get that would help you to feel like you've reached it? How would you know that you've gotten to that place of being organized? What is it that you're searching for and looking for when you are buying the new planner, or getting the label maker, or buying different, containers for the stuff? When we're browsing sites about how to get organized, magazines, blogs, Pinterest, whatever, we're looking for that piece that we're missing. How, if you're like me, you never really get to that point of you feel like, feeling like you've arrived. Just FYI, I don't feel like I've arrived at all. So don't be asking me. A self-maintaining home, yes, control, peace, comfort. What are these feelings, or how do things work? If we end up feeling arrived, which is kind of what we're looking for, what does that mean? What for us? What are we looking for? How do we want to feel? How do we want things to work? And that's our expectation. That's our goal. And a lot of times our goal is vague and kind of nebulous. So which is why I'm using the word feeling, because it's like, well, I just know this isn't it. Well, what would it be? And why are we continuing to seek? And what are we continuing to look for? And let's try to hash out and make it not vague, and make it clear and specific, because maybe we find when it gets clear that it's simpler than we thought, and we can get there. Or maybe we find when we clarify what it is we're going for, that we're actually trying for the impossible, in which case we're never going to get there. Smooth and easy days, immaculate home, this system's so good. I've used that poetry line before. It's T.S. Eliot, dreaming of systems so perfect that nobody will need to be good. And it's like, ouch. That right there is what I was actually working for, looking for. I am, if things on the tech end do go bad, you can hit refresh, and that often works. Of course, if it's frozen, you're not going to hear that. But but people, mental space, decision fatigue, when we're looking for that system that's perfect, for the immaculate home, for the smooth and easy days, what we're looking for too often, more often than not, is that system that's so perfect, it's just right, so that we don't have to be, right? So that nobody needs to be good. Like, it doesn't take any effort from us anymore. Suddenly, this system has worked sanctification magically once for all in our life. And now it's not hard anymore. Now we don't have to work at it. Now we have this system in place, and our discipline, self-control problems are no longer an issue because, voila, we have the magic planner. Now, if you are just looking for organization, like making progress, like actual progress on important projects, or sure, not having piles in the corner, yes, not feeling overwhelmed and playing catch up. These are things that we can actually make progress on. Those are realistic goals. Having a system that's going to make life easy is a false hope. It's a bad expectation. God loves us, and he's not going to let us get that goal because that's not his idea of what's good for us. Our lives, we have our duties, and it's always going to take effort and work from us. And we're never going to be organized in such a way that everything takes care of itself. I think of it like, if you've ever gotten into gardening at all, and I've gotten into it and I've never succeeded, but there are definitely methods out there for how to have a garden and never have to weed it, right? That's a thing. People are out there telling you can have a beautiful garden and it's going to take no work at all. It's like a self-maintaining garden. All you need is the right mulch. It's not chemicals anymore. That's not cool. That's not hip and trendy. So it's usually some kind of special mulch that if you just use this, then voila, no weeds. You just have plants that are wonderful and beautiful and getting the nutrients they need. And all you have to do is go pick the tomatoes, which actually, even that, it turns out, is a lot of work. But that's the kind of solution that we're looking for. And when we're in, you can take that metaphor, and what is the magic mulch that you are looking for that's going to erase weeds and make weeds impossible in your life? We all look to things like that. And that's often when we're trying to get organized, that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. That's the tool that we're looking for, the piece. We're looking for that thing that will make this no longer work. Yes, 5 years of mulching and weeding will get you to less weeding, right? Not zero weeds, not zero work. Even spreading the mulch is actually work and keeping up with it. And, anytime I've tried mulch, I might have fewer weeds, maybe not on the irrigation system we're currently on. But you know what I get? I get bugs. crazy, crazy numbers of roly-polies. The year I tried cardboard to kill off the grass and then different things. I harvested an amazing crop of roly-polies. Yes, a straw bale garden. I've seen those. They look cool. But the thing is, when you don't pull the weeds or you have irrigation that's sprinkling weed seeds into your garden every day, there are ways of gardening that make it harder. And there are ways of gardening that make a garden easier to maintain, right? But there is no way of gardening that gets you a luscious, beautiful garden that doesn't involve spending hours in the garden. No matter what you're doing, you're in there doing something, you're taking care of something. And you're still going to get weeds because that's the way the world works. This is part of the curse. Like, we read through the Bible and it's like, well, God's told us about this. So we shouldn't be trying to return the world to a place to an impossible place, because we know God's already got that taken care of. Like, he knows what he's doing and we're going to get there. But our job where we are right now in our lives is pulling those weeds, right? It's doing what needs to be done. God uses that work to sanctify us, to bring to our attention our sin and our need for him. And the world is rich in metaphor that can draw us back to God. And gardening is definitely one of them that scripture uses. But our life is like the garden, and there are weeds, the weeds of all kinds. And most of the weeds, turns out, this is what we didn't want to admit at the beginning, but if you've been around the loop of trying to get organized enough times, you finally realize, like, the problem is not my planner, and the problem is not my house cleaning routine. Those things could be problems, but my real problem is actually myself. I am the problem in my home, and in the reason my organization attempts haven't stuck. It actually all comes back to me and how I'm using them or not using them, as the case may be, and what I am looking for. I'm looking to solve all these problems of other people. And if they would just do things my way, then everything would work. Yeah, I'm looking for ways to control my environment or my circumstances, my situation, other people, so that things go my way. And that is not a good kind of organization. Yeah. Yes, I am the problem. It's we all come to the point where we don't want to admit it, but we need to admit it. And it's good to come to that place, because then we have identified the actual problem. And yes, we feel like if I were doing it right, then bad things wouldn't happen. Or if I were doing this right, everything would go my way. I'm like, is that what the Bible says? Like, we should all be trying to make everything go our way. Like, not exactly. We are supposed to be trying to do things God's way. And that isn't always neat and tidy and what we would envision our lives to look like. How about that? Yes. My attitude is reflected by my children. Yes. And definitely other people can do it and try to use us in that same way. Yep, that's true. We can realize we're maybe being used as a tool from someone else. Okay, so what if I know I'm the problem? What do I do to get over it? It's like, well, we realize that this just is the project of organization, actually. is learning to do the right thing, learning to love the right thing. And it's not a once and done thing. It's not a, here's the magic piece, do this, and, ding, out the other end comes world problems solved. This is actually just the work of life. Our life work is our sanctification, is learning and growing in this. And we're never going to get to that static spot where now it's all put together, life is put together, we're put together, check, move on. Organization is just what we are doing to keep up with life as it happens. And God's telling a story in our lives, and that story does not go the way we anticipate, the way that we would write it if we were in charge. So organization is the process of handling life as it comes, not controlling life. It's not a tool of control unless we're talking about self-control. The plan is a tool for self-control as our life unfolds and we learn and grow and serve others. Organization, any aspect of it, whether we're talking about calendars and planners or home routines or any of it, is a plan for moving forward to fulfill faithfully our duty. So it's never going to be done. We're never going to have arrived because God always has another thing for us. And so getting organized is an ongoing process. So it's okay and good and right that you haven't arrived. Like, don't try to. It's something that you're still working at, and we will always be working at. So it's not a failure. It's not that you haven't done it. You haven't gotten organized because you're not done with it. It is going to be ongoing work as we adjust. Life changes. Things happen that we didn't expect. That's never going to stop. And our goal isn't to make stuff like that stop. Our goal is to continue to learn and grow and process that and do the right next thing. So, and it's something that we get better at. And so things like making progress on projects or getting rid of piles, we can do things like that. And we will make more progress if we come at organization from the right mindset, because that helps us choose the right priorities, choose where our focus goes so that we can handle life better and better and adapt to what God sends our way. So tools, we should get to tools. But before we talk about the tools that we need for organizing, we have to know what it is to be organized. And to be organized is to be prepared for life as it unfolds and to be able to handle calmly and cheerfully life. It's not to control life, it's to control our response to it. When we're organized, then we are responsive. We're choosing our response. We're deliberate and intentional about how we respond to life instead of being reactive, which is often what we're really trying to overcome. We might use other words, but we're trying to not be reactive, where what happens in life affects us. We are affecting our life, not to control it, but to faithfully work in it. To not be controlled by it, but to be self-controlled. And that's an attitude. I don't have a pause button for life, although I have definitely wished for one. So our expectations definitely play into how we use any tools that we might have and how we see our progress. Because if you've been trying to get organized and have had multiple attempts, then you are better at it than you were when you started. So we need to, instead of trying to get to a spot where we've suddenly arrived and now, ta-da, everything goes our way, we are looking to learn and grow, to get better. And that's not ever going to end or finish. So those tools. I've got to drink some more coffee. Want the train to stop for a hot minute. It's true. I relate to that feeling. So, tool number 1 is a calendar. So this is a practical tool. And maybe this is the least surprising tool out of the 3, because this is start with the basics and start with the least surprising, and then we get to the more exciting things later. But the calendar, it needs to be accurate. You need to have one, and it needs to have all your time-specific commitments. Then the real trick is that you have to look at it. Tool number 1 is definitely coffee. That is true. I don't think you can see my little sign there in the background right there. My sister made for me. It says, drink coffee and pretend you know what you're doing. That's life right there. Okay. So your calendar is your basic tool, your basic planner tool. There are all kinds of fancy planners out there that will help you set goals, and they'll give you this and they'll give you that, and and there's bullet journals, and there's you can go crazy with the planners or the apps or the everything, but basically you need a calendar. It's nice to have other things can be helpful, but if you don't have a calendar, that feeling of needing to get off the train is never going to go away, because we have to have a clear picture in front of us of our time commitments, what time we have available to us, and also basically not miss appointments. Have you ever missed an appointment? I have. Not a good feeling. That's not someone who's organized doesn't miss appointments, right? That's kind of one of our basic premises. No matter what your definition of being organized or what you're trying for, definitely someone who's organized does not miss appointments. And what that comes down to is not some fancy planner or some, perfectly structured life. It actually means that they put it on the calendar right away. They didn't lose it. That little slip, they put it on the calendar right away. And then they looked at their calendar and used that information to do the right thing, right? That's responsible. Responsive is that you have the information you need, you look at it regularly, and then you make the appropriate decision and action based upon that information. And that sounds so easy and so simple, but we all know that that's actually super difficult, and it's simple but hard. And so it's something that we can continue to get better at. Yes, and yeah. So I love Google Calendar because I can set reminders. But yes, right away is the key, getting those appointments into your calendar right away. So you have to have a calendar, and then you have to use it appropriately, or to keep it accurate. And then you have to look at it, which is usually the point of failure for me. Not missing appointments isn't the only part of organization, but someone who's regularly, or, it's just that, even if it's not regular, if it's out of the blue thing, it's that kind of, you feel that'd be judgment, basically, whether it's other people or just your own self saying, you can't be organized if you missed an appointment. Yes. And when you have the calendar and it's written down, so it used to be, when I had smaller kids, fewer commitments, I was way lax about my calendar. and kept it in my head. And so it was definitely an area that I had to grow in, because slowly, as more things started getting put on my plate, but also as more things are in my head is no longer a reliable place to keep things. And so it has to go on the calendar, because my mind is not as reliable as it once was for reminding me of the right thing at the right time. So if you have fewer things going on in your life and you're younger, if you're in your young 20s, then maybe it's working for you. But I'm going to say start the habit now, because it's not going to continue to be that way. So just build that habit of looking at the calendar, because it gets it out of your head. And that takes us to tool number 2, which is a brain dump notebook. So, thank you, Tara. Yep. And yeah, you're all right. Maybe not quite on to tool number 2. Yeah. But it can be paper, it can be digital, it can be whatever works for you. And that's why a calendar, both in Work the Plan and Simplified Organization, my e-courses, calendar is right up there. It's tool number 1 in Work the Plan, and it's tool number 2 in Simplified Organization. Tool number 1 is the third tool we're going to talk about today. So I really should move on so that we make sure and get there. But you have to have a calendar. It's just not optional. If we're trying to be organized, we might often want to start with something more fancy, something more dramatic. We might want to just do a complete overhaul of everything, but really just go basic, just go simple, have a calendar, keep it accurate all the time. So that means it has to be able to go with you everywhere, and look at it. Sometimes multiple times a day, but definitely morning or evening, or morning and evening is even better. So it just really is that simple. And we overcomplicate it when we think we need some elaborate system. Okay, brain dump notebook is tool number 2. And it is a tool, and it's something. How many of you have done a brain dump? And how many of you have been surprised at your brain dump? So a brain dump is basically taking everything that's in your head and getting it onto paper. And it's scary and it's overwhelming, and you will probably be shocked at how much paper you use when you start off doing this. But it's actually another thing that you never stop doing. So I have a free guide, a free brain dump guide. If you've never seen it, you can go grab that. Let me if Stephanie is here, maybe she could put the link in there for me. But I have it on quick type. Is there a brain dumpster? That after you dump it out of your brain, then you throw it in the dumpster. About 2/3 of it, probably. Yes. So I got this from David Allen's GTD first. And yeah, my brain dump notebook is so full, it's frustrating. Well, you do have to do something with it, but the best start is to just do it, because our heads are so full and so scattered that we don't even know what's in there, and we get that feeling that's where we want to have life stop. We want to get off the train for a minute. It's because we can't think. We have there might be clutter in our home, but if there's clutter in our heads, and there is, then that's way more debilitating than clutter around the house. People who are doing declutter stuff talk all the time about how they can't think straight, or they can't do this or that. They can't function when there's clutter. I was like, well, probably. But what's even worse is clutter in your own head. So we've got to get that out and deal with that before we deal with any junk clutter, because it's actually way harder to to function in life when we are trying to hold reminders. No, microphone's not where I thought it was. Trying to hold reminders in our heads. So then we get nervous and afraid and anxious that we're going to forget because, well, we probably will. It's a reasonable fear. And we are trying to hold on to ideas that we don't want to forget because we might want to take action on them, but we aren't sure yet. We need to think about it more, right? We have all kinds of things in our head that we think we should think about, and or feelings of obligation, probably that we haven't even clarified. They're just a vague sense of obligation to different people, to different commitments, and we aren't sure if we're doing the right thing here. And we get all churned up from multiple things that we haven't really thought through. And when you write those things down on paper, then suddenly you can think about them. It clears that mind space. So picture your head as a counter, and what you want to do, what you need to do is make sugar cookies. We just did decorating sugar cookies with the kids yesterday, and I still see stuff on my counter from this. So like, I can use this metaphor. If your counter is full of the stuff to make the sugar cookies, the sugar is out, the bowls are out, and probably the counter is still dirty from lunch. There's dried grated cheese there. You have all the stuff out on the counter. There's no place to roll out the cookies. You can't make the cookies unless there's some space to roll it out. Rolling it out is like the problem solving, creative, like actually deciding what to do. Unless you have space to think through and decide, you're not going to be able to. It's just going to be another thing in this pile of stuff. And so it's really simple to brain dump. But again, it's hard because we have to confront what's in our head, and then we have to do something about it still. And processing the brain dump can take longer than writing it all out. But one thing that you can do, and the first thing you should do after doing a brain dump, because it will be overwhelming. That's legitimate. Then if it's not overwhelming, you're probably not actually doing it. So the best first thing to do is to go through and cross things off. And you might just be holding it in your head and telling yourself, I don't need to think about that. I don't need to think about that. It's not the same thing. It doesn't have the same effect. When you see it, when you handwrite it and you see it and you physically cross it off the list, deleting it, saying, I'm not worrying about this right now. That is a more deliberate, conscious decision that relieves stress instead of just kind of tossing the thing back in the bin of crazy. It's more actually removing. If you can't get the brain dump guide, you can, it is a pop-up sign-up thing. If it's not popping up, you might have some kind of settings wrong, or not wrong, some kind of setting preventing it. But you can always email support@simplifiedorganization.com and they can send it to you. Okay, so brain dump notebook. Because you might start with your very first thorough brain dump using the guide. But I'm putting that link in again. I know I already sent that message, Crowdcast. I want to send it again. It won't let me. That's funny. I had to make it different. Anyway, you are also never done brain dumping. You do a first thorough one that's completely overwhelming, and you realize, like, this is why I feel crazy and insane. It's because I am. And so you kind of start confronting some of that stuff and working through some of that stuff. And it's a long process, but it is the process of handling life. And then we are continually writing things down. It becomes a habit because as we practice it more and more, we find that mental clarity is so worth it. And I call it the habit of ubiquitous capture. Ubiquitous means everywhere. So basically, it's living by the motto, write it down right away. Google Keep is great, or you can have a notebook. You can use scraps of paper, but having 1 or 3 places where you can reliably find it again, because an important part of the brain dump clearing your mind is that you'll be able to find that information again. That's where the stress relief, the tension relief, the anxiety relief comes from, is knowing that now your brain is no longer in charge of keeping track. You have it in a place where you can find it when you need it. And that's really where you start experiencing more and more peace of mind. So there are all kinds of places, like a cheap spiral notebook is, I know, what most people use. If you have a ubiquitous capture and a kind of perpetual brain dump place, you can share that in the chat. A piece of paper on your clipboard, a spiral notebook. They make like legal pads that are half size. These are handy. I had a half size spiral notebook that had blank sheets in it that I filled up. I really liked that one. And I found here a spiral notebook that's a half size page. And so just when I get ideas, they can't stay in my head. They have to go in here. And so, of course, there's purple ink all through there. And then right now, yes, and it's nice to have the digital list. I use Evernote to keep things, or if I need to type, because I can type way faster than I can write, I use Evernote. I've just started using Google Keep for grocery lists and things like that, because my husband and I can share that. But right now I have a full-size legal pad that I've been using because I'm doing like year planning stuff and getting the course ready to relaunch and all that. So it involved longer and bigger lists. And I knew this was a visible, colorful notebook that I would be able to keep track of. Because keeping track of it is the pain, but it's worth the learning the habit over time. Yes, it's a pretty basic productivity habit, because David Allen wrote about it years and years, 20 years ago. You'll find it in a lot of places, but I'm telling you, even for moms, it works. And it maybe especially for moms and mom brain, right? So your first tool of organization is a calendar that you keep accurate and then actually look at. And your second is a reliable brain dump notebook, some kind, cheap, but you have to keep track of it. That's the hard part. That's the kicker. It keeps coming back to us, right? We are actually the problem. We have to look at the calendar. We have to have the brain dump notebook. This is the thing. So that's where the third tool comes in, because as we continue realizing that we are the problem, what tends to happen? When you realize you are the problem, how does that make you feel about organization, or about your life, or about yourself? That means you're supposed to answer. You can answer in your brain dump notebook, though. And I might refill my coffee. Despair, exactly. That's my response. Guilt, yes, want to give up. Too much introspection, for sure. Yes, failure, bad attitude. There we go. Yeah, Yeah, just scrap it all and start over again because this wasn't working. Yeah. So what you need is to keep your attitude in check and aligned and focused on truth, right? Because so often our first response is to kind of go off the deep end, and that's not helping us handle life, right? Kind of the opposite. We give up and we can't handle life anymore. So over the years, trying to solve this problem of organizing our attitudes, I have a tool that helps us organize our attitude. And this is the first, they're called accessories in simplified organization. Simplified organization is my signature e-course. And it's been unavailable for the last 6 months, but I've just re-released it after completely reworking it. It's the same content, but I reorganized it and edited it, put it in new software. It's way prettier now. But and now my kids are starting to come back in, so we'll have to do this part quickly. But I need to start this part with a story that happened just yesterday. So this wasn't a story I was anticipating my children overhearing, but that's all right. Whatever. They probably know. Anyway, the last few days, it's just kind of been the time where I don't feel great about life. It's kind of a reliable time that happens, right? And I had postponed my shower for 2 days. So I was feeling, and I didn't yesterday get dressed all the way. I just stayed in yoga pants and had my hair in a ponytail, and just, I was getting stuff done, but I just felt icky. And later in the day, my husband said, well, just so you know, even when you feel icky, you feel unattractive, basically, and gross. I think you're beautiful. I was like, oh, thank you. That's because you're the best. What? And he said, no, that's because your feelings are lying to you. Oh, well, that too. You're still the best, but yeah, okay. So, my feelings were like how I was feeling about the day and my life and myself were just lies. And the thing is, I was then making choices that aligned with the lie that I was feeling instead of with truth. So yeah. It was sweet until he said, no, it's because your feelings are a lie. I was like, oh, okay, well, true enough. And so the whole day I had been like leaning into the way I felt and kind of making it true. Right? It's like, well, I feel gross, so I'm not going to do anything to not feel gross. take a shower. Like, maybe if you feel gross, you should take a shower. It was more like, I feel gross. I'm just going to like wallow in the grossness of how I feel right now. And so I was like, well, I'm doing a live workshop tomorrow. I'll take a shower tomorrow and put on makeup tomorrow. So, yeah, those days could go on the calendar reliably, right? So that happens to all of us, right? Reliably, and sometimes even at other times, we feel like we can't handle it. We feel despair, guilt, like we can't handle life. We feel gross. We feel incapable, incompetent. It's like we need to stop and say, well, your feelings are a lie. And instead of making choices that align with the way we feel, which is not in accordance with truth, we need to make choices that align with truth instead. And that truth will become more true. Like, we'll be able to feel and experience it as we make choices in accordance with it, instead of making choices that line up with the lie. We make choices that line up with the truth. And that means, but that's, I mean, again, like all the other things, sounds so simple. but it's super hard. It is simple to understand and to have that like shift, like, oh, well, when you say it that way, yeah, it makes so much sense, but it still doesn't make it easy to do. But we need to find ways to make it easier to grow into doing so more and more, to making better choices, to organizing our attitude, which means picking it up from wherever it is and putting it where it belongs, right? Just like if we're organizing a closet, we take stuff out that doesn't belong and we put in what does belong. And we have to do the same thing with our own heads. So the brain dump is like taking everything out. And our third tool is an attitude cheat sheet. And that is putting things in that belong, or the Bible talks about set your mind. And it was a few years ago, I was at a conference and the pastor's wife there, pointed out that set your mind is an active verb. Like that's something we're told to do. It's something we have, you can't drive. I'm not going to do sign language here. To piano lessons. It is cold. What? You're going to have to now talk.
Hans can drive.
Well, he can't drive you not without me. Okay. Yes. Get ready. I will drive in 5 minutes. Okay. You can drive, but I have to go. And I'm not picking up in between. You have to go together. And I'm only going there and coming back.
I was riding my bike.
Okay. Yeah, sign language for not the win. So I just promised to wrap this up in 5 minutes. So our attitude alignment sheet, or our attitude cheat sheet, has those verses, those mottos, the truth that we need to act in accordance with. Yeah. Right, Sarah. The Bible says the heart is deceptively wicked. And then the world says, follow your heart. It's exactly right. So we have to fill our minds, right? Meditate on truth, love truth, know truth, memorize truth, and set our minds on things that are above. That's a deliberate action. So yes, set your mind actively, deliberately, intentionally on truth. And we make that concrete by actually having a page, maybe in your brain dump notebook, maybe in your planner, someplace where reliably, daily, you're going to look at it. And, some people out there have affirmations, or it's positive thinking or whatever. It's not that. It looks similar. It's a similar looking practice, but just like Eastern meditation is not the same kind of meditation the Bible is talking about. Same word, different philosophy, right? Because it's not the unbelieving form of meditation is emptying your mind and letting, your brain do whatever it will. And it's like, no, meditating in the Bible is about reading and thinking deeply about what God has revealed. And it's the same way with this. We are reviewing scripture, like memorizing it, and still, even after it's memorized, like that means that we actually use it and review it, and truth, and making statements that we know are true, but we forget. We write them out and then actually actively, regularly review them. And that is organizing our attitude. That is a concrete, deliberate thing that we can actively, actually do in the day-to-day that will make a difference. In Humble Habits, we do this. We spend a whole week on talking about self-talk and setting ourselves up some quick cheat sheets. And also a prayer. It can weave in with prayer very well. Yeah, your fridge, someplace where you will see it. Bathroom mirror in front of the kitchen sink. we put truth where we will see it, and we review it, we meditate on it, and pray about it. And truth sunk in deep changes us. And it'll be way better and way deeper and more meaningful than any kind of superficial organization change. It gets at the real root and the real heart of what we're actually looking for, which is growing in self-control and in not letting our emotions have reign, but in taking deliberate, intentional steps forward. So, yep, calendar, brain dump, attitude cheat sheet. And every step along the way in simplified organization, you're adding to your cheat sheet in different areas of your life so that you can review the categories and the areas in your life and make good, deliberate changes. So, simplified organization is the name of my signature online class course. And it's lifetime access because we never really outgrow the need for going through this. At least I never do. So you can click the green button there that says simplified organization, and that will take you to a page with more information. And I don't have time for the questions. I'm really sorry, but I will look at that. The cheat sheet is something that you do in some of my different programs. But it just means putting truth on paper and reading it, basically. So thank you all for your time. And you can click that button for more information. I will send up a follow-up email. And now I'm going to go